Welcome back. Transnet's chairperson has weighed in on port congestion issues taking place at various ports. Speaking at a virtual media briefing hosted by the Durban Port Terminals, Andile Sanko said Transnet teams were hard at work to find solutions. His remarks come at a time when over 60 shipping vessels are anchored off the port of Durban, waiting to offload cargo inland. The state-owned entity's infrastructural capacity and systems just don't seem to be able to handle the container volumes that are coming through the ports, which is costing importers and exporters alike and will likely cost end consumers. Transnet Chair has warned that the issues will take time to resolve.
We need to caution that this is going to take time and nothing is going to happen overnight. We have indicated that many a times that we would need to invest in the following. The first one is that of improving our infrastructure. Many of our infrastructure equipment has deteriorated and has passed its economic useful lives. And this is as a result of many years of underinvestment and many years of under-maintenance. And this, of course, has resulted in the backlog in our infrastructure, both in terms of the rail infrastructure as well as our port infrastructure.
Well, chaos at ports is threatening end-of-year shipments and the economy as a whole. The Port of Cape Town also in crisis last week. One of the world's biggest shipping companies, Maersk, said it would bypass Cape Town on a route to the Far East to avoid disruption and further costs. Maersk and MSC are due to impose extra fees for containers coming into South Africa in December, which could make imported goods more expensive. Meanwhile, Transnet Port Terminals warned last week it would have to suspend trucks bringing cargo into Richards Bay due to uncontrollable and unsafe road congestion. Let's discuss. We're joined by Dave Watts from the South African Association of Freight Forwarders. Mr. Watts, thank you for being with us. It sounds alarming, 60 days, 70 days off Durban. I mean, how serious are the delays coming into Durban, Cape Town and Coega ports and going out as well?
Thanks for having me. I would say, look, first of all, to get some of the numbers right, there are this morning 17 container ships outside the two main terminals in Durban. There were 57 at Anchorage. A good point is 22 of those 57 are liquid bulk vessels. They're carrying, I'm not a liquid bulk expert, but since we don't have a refinery here anymore, Durban is now handling all of the eastern side of South Africa's imports of petroleum products, with the exception of what's supplied by Sasol. So that's a really exceptional thing. And so the hands up in the air about the number of the gross number of vessels is probably misguided. It isn't, however, misguided when we talk about the number of container ships out there, even though some of the numbers aren't that accurate. I saw reports from one media of 71,000 containers. Actually, in the 17 odd ships that are currently waiting at Anchorage, there's about 27,000 import containers and a slightly more estimated export containers. It's not good news. And your previous speaker absolutely hit the nail on the head what the real reasons are, and that's a lack of investment in infrastructure over probably 15 years, 10 to 15 years. There has been some, it's been nowhere near enough. And mid-life refurbishment just didn't happen. So this was a situation that was coming down the line at us like a steam train, and it's arrived. So, yeah, it's a real problem. How soon will we be able to clear it? Again, your previous speaker was quite accurate in saying this can't be cured. You don't get cranes or rubber tie gantries or straddle carriers off the shelf. They have to be ordered. Real attempts being made by Transnet, they report, and I'm confident that's what they're doing in trying to supply some short-term answers, one in the overall operation of the terminals, try and improve that, and the other side get some, possibly even some second-hand or used equipment in. That's certainly happening as we speak in Cape Town with 7 second-hand rubber tire gantries arriving from the west coast of America very soon. That's going to help a lot down there. And in fact, Cape Town's doing a little bit of a recovery. I'd prefer somebody, I'm in Durban, so I'd prefer somebody from Cape Town speaks to it. But certainly a number of vessels outside has come down quite sharply. Kuka and NCT, Nuga Container Terminal and PE, constantly suffering from weather issues. They also have some equipment problems. But from my perspective, sitting here, what you hear is it seems to be weather is a real problem down there. And incidentally, we lost in October 3 complete days of performance in Durban container terminals because of weather, wind basically. So we have a lot of problems that are not of anybody's making, and a lot of problems that really are the making of, well, to be honest, Transnet's previous management at the executive level. These things are easy to know. You know your equipment is going to wear out. It's not news to anybody, especially the work this equipment does. And plans should have always been in place for mid-year refurbishment and for replacement where appropriate. And really, overall, that didn't happen. There was some, but it was not sufficient by any stretch of imagination.
So you talk about previous management. How do you feel about current Transnet management? That was the chair saying that it'll take time, but they're doing their best. How do you receive that news? I'm
obviously not here to comment on previous management. There's nothing more to be said. The current management at the CEO level or GCEO level, I'm much more positive that she has the right thinking about where she can take the business, in particular on the port side, which she has a lot of experience. She needs the support of government in one way or another. I'm not sure how they can afford it or if they can afford it, but without money, because that's now the shortcoming, that's where the problem lies, unless she can get the right kind of assistance from the state, and that doesn't constitute just more expensive borrowing. It means some kind of input into the business so that they don't have this massive debt. And so, of course, allied to the big debt is very, very high interest costs. So I know that she has the right qualifications for the job. Whether she'll get the support from the state, which she absolutely needs, that's a question that will be answered in the next few weeks, I imagine.
Well, some organizations are calling for private investment now and the involvement of private companies. The Road Freight Association, for example, saying it has to be fixed. They were talking about the problem of trucks going into Richards Bay. Do you believe that private investment is the answer? That's also been raised for the railway tracks as well?
Well, being a private sector person all my life, I'd have to say yes. I absolutely agree with Mr. Kelly from the Road Freight Association. The management of the movement of these bulk cargoes, in particular into Richards Bay, but also into Lebombo through to Maputo, well, frankly, there isn't any. Trucks just roll up and willy-nilly at any rate, and that needs to have been managed and controlled from right at source right through to the whole system. It's totally unreasonable to have towns like Mpangeni, Richards Bay, Piet Retief and those towns inundated with these trucks that when they arrive aren't going to get serviced anyway because there's simply too many. Very, very poor overall management, not just from Transnet, the state, but overall from all of those in that logistics circle. He was quite correct in what he said, and I support him fully. Your question about private sector, that isn't something that's just going to switch everything on. As you know, there's plans to bring in an outsider to run DCT. That seems to have gone a bit cold. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. The problem with that, of course, is the trade unions and the workers aren't overly thrilled about that. And I think that might be part of the problem that we've seen at DCT in recent months, that workers are unhappy about, or at least the trade unions are unhappy about private sector involvement there. That's got to be sorted out because no question, in many of these areas, I'm convinced private sector would do a better job than has been the case. They could hardly do a worse job, to be perfectly honest.
All right, final question for you. I mean, what are the immediate implications? Christmas is coming, so people want things to move quickly. You tempered some of the numbers. I think you said 17 ships are sitting out there, if that's correct. What are the implications? Because some are saying this could lead to job losses, huge implications for the economy. Some are saying this is worse than load shedding.
Worse than load shedding, that might be right. It already has led to job losses. One company I know has had to lay off people because they just cannot get the steel they need. That was mentioned recently. Will we manage to handle? Well, the big issue, of course, is we're just not handling enough containers across the quay at either terminal, especially not DCT, the very big terminal. We're doing about 2,500. This weekend we did a bit better, 3,500. We should be doing 5,000 minimum a day. We're nowhere near that. Were we doing 5,000 a day and had been doing that, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We're just not managing it for a variety of reasons, which your previous speaker also spoke to. So what's going to happen with close on 60,000 moves over the next, in these particular ships, and of course others are arriving? Will we manage to do that at 2,500 by the time, say, industry closes, plus minus, or probably on the 14th with a holiday on the 15th? Some of those ships right at the end of the queue might not make it. And of course, supplying somebody a week before the holiday probably doesn't work either, because it's factories, particularly in factories, retail, big problems at retail, but also manufacturers who want stuff so they can make the stuff. That's a real problem. Will everything arrive? I doubt it. Most of it, I hope so. I really do. I think, and certainly with the efforts that are being made at our terminals, all of them, there's some chance that we'll get a reasonable recovery. And I understand quite a lot of companies have their inventories reasonably high, so we may be not a big disaster. I'm praying that's the case. So the goose does come for Christmas.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Dave Watts from the South African Association of Freight Forwarders. And earlier we heard from the chair of Transnet saying they're trying to turn this around, but there's a huge backlog, those gantry, those big cranes that he was talking about not working, and then the goods can't be offloaded. We'll follow the situation very closely for you.